Hi guys, this is Mr. Grabakis. So today we're going to be focusing on equations and inequalities. So you guys will be able to solve absolute value equations and inequalities by the end of this lesson. All right, so I'm just going to go over a couple of examples and then I'll just go through sort of the step-by-step of what you should do. So basically what happens with this is these absolute value bars, you can treat them almost like parentheses, except nothing is allowed to go in or come out. So they are more restrictive than parentheses. So as we're working through this first example, you want to isolate your absolute value bars. So right now we have a -2 times the absolute value bars. So we are going to divide by -2 first. So then once we do that, we have the absolute value of 4 minus 8b is equal to -24 divided by -2 is 12. So now what happens with absolute value? Absolute value is the distance from 0, if we were to break this down. You guys have worked with absolute value in the past. Basically, the idea is whatever is inside of these absolute value bars will come out as positive. So let's say for an example, just as a note over here, if I were to have the absolute value of -2, that would equal 2. I could also have the absolute value of +2, and that will also be equal to 2. So this relates to our next step. We need to solve for b. I just told you that these absolute value bars are almost impenetrable. But if we were to figure out how to work with the absolute value bars, we could break it down and find b. So what we do is it actually breaks into 2 scenarios, just like we were talking about over here. The first scenario is just as you see it, 4 minus 8b equals 12. Cool. Solve from there. But the other option is that inside of here could be a -12. And the absolute value of -12 does equal +12. So you could have 4 minus 8b equaling -12. So as long as you split it into 2 equations, this is what allows you to break down those absolute value bars. So from here we solve as normal. So we would, for this one, we subtract 4, we get -8b equals 8, divide by -8, divide by -8, we get b is equal to -1. We do the same thing for this guy. So once you do that, you get -8b equals -16. Divide by -8, we get b equals 2. So there is one last thing that we need to do that is on the annoying side, but it has to be done. We have to check. There are situations where we will end up finding a possible answer, but when we plug it back in, it's not going to work. So we're going to check by plugging both of these back into the original. So I have -2 absolute value of 4 minus 8, and then we're going to plug b in, is -24. So the first one that we're going to check is -1. We have -2 absolute value of 12 equals -24. This is negative 24 equals negative 24. So that is good. So that means that negative 1 is an answer. So now we want to check the other possible answers. Negative 2, 4 minus 16. Negative 2, absolute value of negative 12. So now for this one, we know that the absolute value of negative 12 is positive 12. Multiply it by negative 2. That gets us negative 24. So we have just proven that both of these numbers that we found are answers. So the way that you'll see them answered on the answer keys will be in what we call set notation, which is just those little squiggle bars with your answers in between them. So this right here would be what I would look for your final answer. So here's another example of the same thing. I'm going to go over what an answer would look like that didn't work. So let's go through this like we did for the first one. We want to isolate or get the absolute value bars alone. So we want to subtract 1 first. So be careful, guys. A mistake that's commonly made is students actually do 1 minus 2 here. When you're working with this 2, or technically negative 2, is attached to the absolute value. So you actually can't do 1 minus 2. When you're solving equations, regardless of what kind of equation, you actually want to think about doing the opposite of PEMDAS. So you want to see if you could add or subtract anything first, which in this case we're subtracting 1. Then the next thing that you want to check for is multiplication or division. Can I multiply or divide by something? And then you want to see if you can work with any exponents and then break down any parentheses. So for this one, we subtract first. So then we have a negative 2x minus 3, absolute value of 4x plus 2. So then the next step that we want to do is we want to divide by negative 2, divide by negative 2. So then it cancels on the left, and we have absolute value of x minus 3 equals negative 2x minus 1. All right, so this is where we were at in the last example. We've isolated the absolute value bars, so the only way that we are allowed to break down those absolute value bars is if we break this into 2 equations. The first equation is as is, so we have x minus 3 equals negative 2x minus 1. And then the other one is x minus 3 equals the opposite of what we have over here. Just like we did the opposite number in the last one, we're going to do the opposite of the other side. So in this case, we would have a positive 2x and a positive 1. So you're going to solve like we did in the last one. So take each of these individually. So one possible answer is x equals 2/3. All right, so I have 2 possibilities. So now I'm going to take a second to do my check. So I'm going to check 2/3 first. So I'm going to plug it into the original. So I have 1 minus 2 absolute value of x minus 3 equals 4 times x plus 3. All right, so for 1, we want a common denominator, so this is going to be 3/3. So 3/3 minus 14/3, that's going to get us negative 11/3 is equal to 17/3. That is not true. So that means that because of our check, 2/3 is not an answer. So we call this an extraneous solution. So 2/3 is an extraneous solution. So now we want to check -4. If -4 works, then -4 is our only answer. If -4 doesn't work, then we have a no solution situation. 1 minus 14 gets me -13. So this does work. So that means that x equals 4 is an answer. So then the final way that you're going to report that to me is in your little squiggles, your set notation of -4. All right, so the challenging part of this is that check more so than anything. You also have to make sure that you split it into 2 equations. So you do have the possibility of either having 2 possible solutions, 1 solution, or no solutions. So just to reiterate, these are the guiding steps to solving the equations. Make sure you isolate, create 2 equations, solve, and check.